Hello and welcome back to the Building Our World podcast. It has been a while, but it's been amazing to get recording some great conversations again. And what a way to start things off once more with this week's guest, Dani Strazza, who was the talent acquisition lead at SumUp. I was super keen to get her on the show because while she was at SumUp, she grew the talent team from 2 to 27, tribalized the whole function within talent acquisition, and the results of what she did were pretty incredible. Time to hire decreased, candidate satisfaction went up, quality of hire went up, and of course, the tech team grew massively as well. So she came on and really went into a lot of depth on why she did it, what she did, and how she overcome the various different stumbling blocks in this tribalization program. So if you are in talent acquisition and you want to take your function and your processes to the next level, compete for that best talent, get that employer branding bang on, then I seriously encourage you to listen to Dani and her story. She is super generous and super forthcoming with her wisdom, and I know you'll get value from it. So without further ado, let's get this episode started. I wanted to cut right into it, and if you could just tell everyone what your role was at SumUp and your sort of responsibilities, and kind of in a nutshell what you achieved there in your time.
All right, thank you. So I was a talent acquisition chapter lead at SumUp. I came to Berlin to help structuring the tribalization of talent acquisition in the tech part. So for almost 1 year, my main responsibility was really to scale up the team from 2 people to 27 and build 3 different functions in there.
So did you basically come into it with the people above you saying we need like 100 software engineers or people in tech? I don't know what the numbers are, but
yes, actually, SumUp have been tribalizing for 2 years now. They were tribalizing all of the tech teams. So when I came to Berlin, we had already 12 tribes and only 2 recruiters to work for all of them. And the tribes were very big already. So what they wanted was, why not to tribalize talent acquisition as well, right? And every single team of TA would be inside each tribe. And with that in mind, we would be able to really understand the necessities of those teams, the product itself, so we could sell better to the candidates. And then, we had to just create 12 different talent acquisition teams.
so when you say tribalizing, because a lot of people still don't really know what that means, I know it's quite like a trendy thing, and I've actually seen quite a few companies copy SumUp now because of the tribalizing way. So what does it actually mean, and what does that like essentially entail for a company like SumUp?
Good. So when you have a company, right, and imagine that you want to launch 10 products at the same time, okay? But you're in a very traditional company, so you have one product team, one marketing team, and so on and so forth. So how can those teams prioritize 10 products at the same time to work on? It's impossible, right? They need to do like 2 first or 3, depends on how big is the team. When you tribalize, that means that you have kind of value streams formed in one small company inside the real company. So let's say we want to build the landing product, right? So then surrounding the landing product, you have one marketing team, one engineering team, product, business, and so on and so forth. So that means that if you have 3 products for landing, they can be launched at the same time. So if you have 12 tribes and 3 products, well, do the math, right?
In terms of tribalizing itself, is there like a limitation or a concern that you ultimately get like massive differences in culture and just ways of doing things? And I suppose to an extent that's like a good thing, but how do you kind of try and
Yes.
keep it as a whole whilst tribalizing?
Yeah, this is a concern. And what you do to keep the culture, the main culture alive, is to have chapters, right? So, like I was the chapter for talent acquisition, we have chapter leads for DevOps, for engineering, and etc. So, what do? They guarantee two main things first. The first one is the culture itself. So across all of those teams, everyone that works in that function, that domain of expertise, like TA, that was one of them, they will keep the culture alive. And the second thing they do is also to guarantee that the processes work as the same in the same way for that domain, right? So this is the main responsibility of a chapter.
Okay. But do you get like different tribes or different people in the talent team like fighting over different candidates? Um,
Yeah, this could happen actually, right? And at the beginning, I won't lie, we had this happening a few times. And then it was good because, when you think, well, let's make some mistakes and then get better on it, right? So it was kind of what we were doing there. We were shaping along the way how we could have a very, very strong culture in a way that they would share knowledge and share candidates instead of fighting over from them for them. So at one point, we just created three different rituals that could allow us to really share every single position we had. And if it was the same, we could share candidates or work together even.
yeah. It's similar to like a traditional recruitment agency where it's like a candidate first approach where one person has the candidate and then you see kind of
Yes.
where they
Yes.
fit.
Exactly. But there's another thing as well that allow us not to be fighting that much because the main concern when it comes to talent acquisition inside that team that I had was quality. So we were not fighting to have a position closed in 20 days, right? Where you need a lot of candidates in the funnel. So when you think about quality and when you prioritize this, then you can really do things in a process that works well. And you can do all the process together if you want and guarantee that you have a nice funnel.
Yeah. Okay. So after that, like tribalization, you obviously have to try and come up with some sort of headcount. Now it seems like SumUp things are very measured, and you know exactly how many people you need to get a certain product launched. Because when I'm working with companies, and sometimes I have like provisional conversations with companies, and they try and get you all excited, like we need 100 Java engineers next
Yeah.
year. And I always think that's a very round, convenient number. Do you actually need 100 Java engineers? How have you actually worked out which sort of level of people goes where and how many people you need to get things going? And then you end up filling, say, like 5 positions, and they go, "Oh, actually, I think we're okay."
Yeah.
So, how did you go about really working out the headcount?
Yeah. This is one of the things that I like the most in talent acquisition because this is what I call being true advisors for the business, right? They really do come to you and say, we need 100 people. But when
Yeah,
you dig deep, you start asking them the right questions. So, what problem do you want to solve with this role? And what problem do you want to solve with that role? And then you understand that what they actually think they need is not exactly what they do need. And it's a combined effort, right? The talent acquisition team with the business partners. And for tribalized teams, of course, you have a head of people or a people lead inside that can help with org design. Org design is extremely important for any team in any company because they really understand the amount of positions, considering not only what you need to build, but the skills you have.
I see. And when it comes to the talent team that you were trying to assemble as well, it wasn't just 27 just talent acquisition partners. It was like
Yeah.
split, wasn't it, between leads, recruiters, and then you do a
Yes.
lot of stuff around like the candidate
Hmm.
experience. Is there any
Yeah.
way, because there's obviously a lot of companies and maybe people listening in Berlin who
Hmm.
will be going through scale ups, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that kind of layout for your team? How did you know that that's what was going to be needed to
Yeah.
grow?
I made a lot of calculations, really a lot. So the first thing I did was to get the past headcounts that each team had before, right? So in I don't know 2019, how was the team like in each tribe? And then you get quarter by quarter how many people join, how many people left, right? And then from that you understand the number of people that were in the head count. And then the next calculation you need to do is what is the provision growth that we think we'll have, right? So then the calculation goes quarter by quarter, and considering that you want to grow twice, then you double the number. So with that, you know already how many people you need to hire, right? So of course it's not the perfect number, but I got very close because a lot of calculation helped. And then what I did was to calculate then the team considering the amount of positions each recruiter do, each TA lead do, right? And I have very strong beliefs when it comes to talent acquisition. The first one is what I wrote in the article, right? A recruiter cannot do more than 7 roles if you want to prioritize quality. So this is one of the things I considered. And a TA lead 3 positions because they need to lead a team. And the third thing that I strongly believe is that you cannot lead more than 7 people because you're not going to do that very well. So I used those 3 numbers, 3 data to calculate what I had to have in each team. And they were very different from each other. A team had 1 person and the other one 7. Depends a lot. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
7 seems to be like that magic number of,
Yeah.
of how it can of keeping that quality. And then are those recruiters then doing like the first stage interviews and then combining with hiring managers?
Yeah.
What? How do you get about? Because every every talent team I speak to and every talent team I work with is they always have their favorite hiring managers because they're the ones that respond on
Ah,
Slack a bit quicker or are like
yeah.
super responsive. Um, how do you get all the hiring managers pointing in the same direction,
Mm-hmm.
doing the same processes? You know, even little things like looking through the same calendar format.
Yeah.
Or doing the same kind of feedback. I'm guessing you would have come up with everyone wanting to do things in a different way. So
Yes.
how did you get these hiring managers all pointing in the same direction?
In the beginning, it's tough because they don't know you, they don't know what you can accomplish, and they don't trust the team yet, right? So I really believe that the first thing you need to do is to ask them what do they want, what their pain is, right? If you don't ask this question, you're just assuming things that might be wrong. Because one thing that I learned in the past in my university actually is that people feel in different ways. And even though you talk about anger, for example, I feel anger in a way and you in a way. But well, then after you ask this question, what happens is you're going to start working things how they want for a while because you don't have the team. But then they will see the chaos and they will appreciate the order. So I think it's little by little, right? You get the trust one day after another.
I think as well you have to explain why we're doing this and why our processes are in a certain way and how if we do this, this will benefit you. This is going to get people on. It's going to save you time and make your life.
Yes. Yes, and I believe that every time you talk to them and you make them reflect on something, is a little bit more of trust that we gain from them, right? And I advise everyone in talent acquisition to do that, because the same way they teach you stuff, you can also teach them a few things. And this is how you start understanding the most important things. We are in their side. I had a stakeholder when I started at SumUp that was very difficult, and he is now one of my best friends, because when you realize that you're all in the same team, things change.
It makes a huge amount of difference when the hiring managers and talent are on side. And it's actually quite a big problem in recruitment and in a lot of companies that, especially like I've worked with, one of the main stumbling blocks is that almost the hiring managers don't take the talent team seriously. And they almost see them as like a blocker to just getting the job done, which
Yeah.
is I think is maybe what it like used to be like, and maybe like the old perception from like 5-6 years ago. But now I think that perception's definitely changed, especially in Berlin where there's really good talent acquisition teams.
Yeah, but you know what? One thing that I realized with time is that there are two things that might make them feel like this. One thing is when you act as order taker, right? That means
Yeah.
that you're not trying to understand the position they want. You're not trying to understand their pain. You're just like bringing candidates and candidates until you close a role. So this is something that doesn't work, right? And the second thing is when you put a lot of processes just because people, especially inside tech companies, they don't want a lot of processes to complicate everything. They want processes that will just make their lives easier and make the process clean. So you can keep yourself simple and effective.
What do you think's the ultimate question? What do you think's the optimum interview process for a software engineer?
Oh, nice. There's one thing that I discussed a lot with my team, which is you start thinking about this from the end. So the end is the debrief session, right? So everyone will talk about the candidates. There's one thing that always happens, which is someone is in doubt about some competency this person was trying to assess, right? There's one way of you not having this happening. So the way is, imagine you have a four-stage process, right? And normally you have four main competencies. So seniority level, then hard skills, soft skills, and culture, right? Four. And you have four stages. What I always try to do is for each stage of the interview, you assess two of those competencies. And by the end of the process, you will have four people inside the debrief that evaluated the same competencies. So if you have a doubt, the other one can just say, oh no, I checked that as well. And I can see that this is not a problem or it is a problem. So for a software engineer, what I usually recommend is you start with the recruiting process. So the recruiter will assess seniority level and soft skills, right? And a little bit of culture always. Then you can have the assessment stage where they can do a coding challenge or pair programming, whatever works better. Then you can have a stage that is the hiring manager, and the hiring manager can really assess together with the team if they want hard skills and also seniority. And then you have the last stage, the bar raiser, as we call at SumUp, which will assess only culture or and something that someone had a doubt, right? Usually, this is how we do. It can be more, but never less. And one thing that it was really important that we did was for every single person that was interviewing, we used it to send a pre-interview, a prep interview, so they knew exactly what kind of things they should assess in there, and they had the summary of the candidates. this way, we would never get to the end with them saying, oh, but nobody assessed that. So
Yeah,
this is how we try to do.
it covers yourself. One thing that always, if I do a post on LinkedIn, one thing that always gets the most engagement if I do something about like, do you want to do a take home test or a live coding,
Oh,
like
yeah.
pair programming? It's like the ultimate divisive topic in tech talent acquisition and software engineers.
This is very polemic, right? What I
Yeah.
realized after a while is that normally most senior individual contributors, they don't really like the coding challenges that we have. And the reason why, from what they told me, is that it doesn't really assess your day to day. It's assessing some logic skills or whatever, and they don't feel good doing it because it's not going to assess anything, right? So it's just they feel they're losing their time. So what I always recommend is to have at least three different options for to assess hard skills, and ask them what they prefer. So it could be pair programming, it could be whiteboard, it could be coding challenge. So you can be creative. We even tried at SumUp to create a challenge inside GitHub and send to them so you could
Yeah.
do it together. It was kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually companies give them access to their GitHub repo, and then they just
Yeah.
push a solution. It takes like a couple of hours. It seems like that's like fairly standard practice. Okay, so you've done the tribalization, you've worked out the headcount, you've worked out the processes.
Yeah.
You have now these roles to fill at what is a massively high scaling tech company. How long was it till you actually started seeing the results of all these calculations, of all this work, and it was all starting to bear fruit?
4 months. So in the first 3 months, I built the whole team. So me with three other, actually two peers and my former leader, they were so amazing. They helped me a lot building the team from the scratch. It took 3 months to have the team in place. And one thing that we did that was nice is that every tribe lead was interviewing for the candidates in their tribe. So they were all with, we had the buying of everyone, right? It was nice. So after those 3 months, it takes you like 1 month for start really performing, because you need to understand the processes, the team, and everything. But after the fourth month, numbers started to appear. And when it was the sixth month, I already could see a lot of numbers dropping, time to hire, raising candidate quality, raising candidate experience. It was super interesting to see, you know. In the 8th month, I calculated everything so I could see if it was really, really working, because just sensing it is not enough, right? You need data. And I could see the time to hire dropped 50%.
Wow.
Candidate quality increased 30%. And it was measured by pass-through rate. It was super interesting, right? The amount of candidates you send versus the candidates that are approved. And we also had, if I'm not wrong, 20% increase in candidate experience as well, measured by strongly agree for all of the stages of the process. It was really, really nice. And by the end of the first year, it was actually last month, we did a massive candidate hiring manager survey to ask the same questions I asked them in my first month at SumUp Europe, which were very about seniority of the recruiting team, if they were true advisors or not, the processes, and so on and so forth. And it had all changed. It was so good to see, you know. We really felt that we were in the right direction.
Amazing. So you really, there's a lot of legwork at the start and a lot of months where you don't see sort of the results. Kind of the story of recruitment. So, what would you say to someone who might be in a similar situation to you were now, sort of a couple of years ago, where they are heading up now their talent acquisition team, and they've got a job on their hands to meet the headcounts and the expectations. Is there anything you wish you'd have known then that you know now?
Yeah, I think there are two main things. The first one is trust the numbers, trust the data, right? If you rely on data, you're not going to go wrong. And then if you just trust it, there will be a lot of times when you will hear from everyone, this doesn't work, this is not going to work, I'm very unsatisfied. But after 6 months, everything will change. So my two advices are trust the data and be resilient. You need resilience. You will listen a lot of not good things you don't want to hear, but then it's going
Yeah,
to change.
absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, that's such a good overview of what you did, how you did it, and the results of it all. But coming back to like yourself, so SumUp, it was your first Berlin role, wasn't it? And you moved from the Brazil
Yes.
office. What's been like the main differences, do you think, in like, say, like the Brazilian working culture and the Berlin working culture?
Brazilians, they see their job as their life, which is very, very different. We don't really separate anything and we work so much. So it was refreshing to come here and be able to start looking to work-life balance, I think this is the first thing. And I see a lot of people here that say that, oh, it's so interesting how you relate to work. It's so different, right? So this is one thing that is different. And then when it comes to the company itself, I think they are not that different from each other in different countries. I think that communication is key. And sometimes if you don't communicate, you think you're not alike. So, yeah, I would say that the only different part is the relationship with work.
Yeah. I think now like there's so much data and so many studies on like work life balance and like productivity because it's very like old school and it's almost like quite easy to do. It in a weird way, it's easy to work all the time because if that makes sense, because you can measure like time at your laptop,
Yeah.
time at your desk, and say, right, I've worked this amount, so therefore I'm being this productive. But actually, if you take all your vacation and switch off from work, you are far more productive. You think clearly, you're way more creative, and you're like happier as well. And what's the point of doing a job if you're tired and miserable all the time? Like you might as well enjoy the process.
Yes, and at the beginning, it was very strange to me because I had the feeling I was not working enough, right? And then at some point, I started realizing that I was working less, maybe, but way more productive. And it was really challenging coming here in the middle of lockdown and had to work inside my house. So imagine someone that only working inside the house. So when do you stop? But the interesting part is that at the same time I was in this process myself, I used it to tell my whole team that they had to really care about their life. And if they were not feeling, it was an agreement of ours. If they were not feeling good at some point, at some day, take the day off. And tomorrow is going to be a different day, right? So it was interesting. And at some point, I just started doing what I was saying, and everything worked.
Amazing. It's so hard though. Like I was the same at my old place. I would say the same to my team. Like if you're feeling rubbish, just step away. and then it comes to the day where you're feeling rubbish, and it's so hard to
Yes.
to like detach. But especially, I mean, with any job, but like in recruitment, when you're dealing with people, you have to be like upbeat and kind of on the ball, and it is just not fun doing recruitment when you're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah. And you know what? Especially in leadership, it can be lonely,
Mm.
because sometimes when you're a leader, you start joining meetings only for you to challenge people, right? Never to talk about whatever. And you receive a lot of feedback, you receive a lot of everything. So if you don't take the time to really relax, it's too much, right? So I think this is a very important part for any leader to have. If you're not feeling good, take the day off. You're not gonna die. Nothing
Mm.
major is gonna happen. If it does, they will call you.
Yeah,
But you need to remain with a good emotional intelligence, with a good and relaxed mind.
yeah, absolutely. If you don't check your emails for the day, like
Yeah.
it's fine.
Exactly. Nothing is gonna happen, nothing major. So just do it. But we get scared, right?
Yeah,
Because it's a lot of responsibility. But after a while, I just realized that it's fine not to be there when you're not okay, because actually it's
mm,
better for everyone.
mm,
So yeah,
mm.
just respect yourself. This is
Yeah.
important.
I was the same when I started this recruiting business. Like the first few months, just like always on, always online. And I remember like I took like a week off, essentially, first week off, and it was super hard the first few days to not look at my emails. I didn't do it, but it was like because I set myself a challenge not to do it. It
Yeah.
was super hard the first few days, but then after like 3 or 4 days off, you realize like there is actually stuff outside of work. The sun will still rise in the morning, so
Yeah.
it's fine. And then you definitely get a sense of the bigger picture, and you can zoom out a bit more. And
Yes, and one thing that I realized after doing it is that when you build a team with a safe environment and a team that really, really do support each other, it's very different. I knew that if I had anything, or if they knew if they had anything, we could count on each other. And this is so important. We don't realize the difference that it makes, but it does. And
mm,
if I can tell people one thing when you're building a team after resilience and trust, is that build a team where you trust every one of them, and where you can see everyone that will support you when needed, because you're a leader, but you're also a person. You need to remember that, right? After I started being vulnerable, and I saw people being vulnerable as well, I realized the difference it makes. And it's really, really important.
mm, super good advice.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up. We'll wrap up quite soon, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Berlin Tech Hub in general. Now you've been there for a bit of time. What are your thoughts on like the ecosystem and the market, and what do you think will happen to Berlin Tech in the future?
I think it's a very competitive market. And actually, when you talk about tech, is kind of different from business, because they receive so many messages every single day that honestly, they don't like recruiters. So
Yeah.
they don't like to read a message. So one thing that for me was really, really interesting to realize is that and I was trying to build that at SumUp. It was I was calling it tech community, which means it would be a team of real engineers that would only work on building relationships across all the countries that we had operations. Because honestly, what they want the most is to find a place where they enjoy the people they will work with, and where they will have real challenges when it comes to coding, right? And how can you say all of that through a message on LinkedIn? You can try, right? You can personalize and stuff, but you need to have a good relationship. So this is how I see the future in Berlin, not only in Berlin, but everywhere. If you don't build relationships, good relationships, it will become more and more difficult for you to attract anyone, especially if you're a very small company, because how can they know what you can offer, right? I don't know if this answers your question, but for me, this is the real future.
Yeah, absolutely. You see it a lot more now. I mean, myself, obviously, I've been basically building up my Berlin tech talent community. And what I try to do is give people content and like insights that aren't to do with like job hunting through like emailing lists or for example, this podcast. And what I've definitely found, and again, this takes months for it to come to fruition, is that you get to a point where people come to you, like candidates come to you, and people refer you. And if you give people value in between their job search, and I suppose with companies in general, if you have a good employer branding as well, and I suppose
Yes.
that comes into it, then it can make the process of acquiring talent so much easier because yeah, recruitment isn't transactional anymore, especially for software engineers and tech. It can't be because you'll just lose.
You know what? People don't realize, but recruitment can be so big of a structure. We can have employer branding, tech community teams, CRM team, the own recruiters, candidate experience. So the more you want to bring, the more you need to structure your team. And you were talking about employer branding, right? But this is a very polemic topic because most of the companies that I saw so far, they don't realize that employer branding is not inbound marketing, right? Inbound recruitment. So it's not that you're going to get the results right away hiring people. Employer branding is not about this. It's about building the image of the company so everyone can desire your brand, right? And for you to get there, it's at least 2 years. So it takes a lot of time, but it doesn't mean they're not doing anything. You see numbers day by day growing, but it's not something that you can see right away. So if you want something right away, you better have the employer branding and inbound marketing, so you can have both and things can work. This is very interesting because all of the companies I've seen so far, they had the same problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But it really does make such a difference. So if
Yes.
obviously, as I'm an external recruiter, so if I talk to a candidate about, say, I don't know, like 4 or 5 different companies, they'll come back to me and it'll always be the companies that invest most in their employer branding, their content creation, and just generally like their online presence. Because it takes like 10 seconds to form an opinion of a company.
Yes.
Looking through their website, their careers page, what have they done? And it's such an easier sell. So I always love working with companies who have done that. It makes my job a lot easier.
Exactly. And the most important thing is that it takes like 1 2 years for you to really build an image, but it takes you 5 seconds to destroy it, right? So at the same time you have your employer branding team working, you also need to guarantee that all communications work, that during the recruitment process itself, people can trust you. You're not overselling anything, right? Candidates want to trust. You don't join a company that you don't trust. You don't join a company where you see that you're going to be stagnated. So those things need to be very, very clear.
Yeah.
Even if they don't like the position itself in the first process, if you give them an amazing experience and make them trust, make them be excited, they will look for you
Yeah,
as soon as they see the right position, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. You see it like a lot now. Obviously, we're in this era of cancel culture where people get cancelled. But
Yes.
even like in terms of like, obviously Berlin Tech on LinkedIn, like kind of everyone's pretty much like connected with each other and it sort of all pops up. But you do see companies like get bashed from time to time. And if there's a bit of bad press or I remember last year with like N26, they had this whole Workers Council thing. They got bashed. Other companies have been bashed for like letting people go and things like that. But I suppose that's part of it, especially as you're like as companies get bigger. But it's interesting now that it's companies that are the target of attacks and bad press on LinkedIn, and especially in Berlin Tech where everyone knows everyone and everyone's connected. It can be a bit damaging.
And this is super sad, because sometimes it's not exactly what the company is, but it's what the company did once, but it just make people not to desire anymore. So it's super important to communicate things correctly, to pass trust, to make sure that people really understand the culture since the beginning. One thing that I used to do when I was hiring for my team was I built a culture deck for the team and about the team. And for every single candidate I interviewed, I used it to send this so they could really understand what our team was about and they could get excited about this, right? And even if by the end of the process, I was saying like, oh, I don't see you that senior yet, but I could bring you as a mid analyst or a junior, they would say yes most of the time because they knew they would grow and that we were not just trying to put them down. We were actually putting them to success, right? That's why it's so important. The trust makes everything different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been super good to just geek out to talent acquisition and Berlin Tech. They're like two of my favorite things. It's basically what I do all the time. So it's been great to do that. And thanks so much for like really eloquently putting across the challenges you had at SumUp, what you did, how you did them, and the results of that. I think with different companies emerging and different companies scaling, especially post-pandemic, I think it will be really valuable to a lot of people in talent acquisition. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. I had a great time, actually. It was fun.
Thank you so much for listening to the Building Our World podcast. I really hope you got some great value from it and enjoyed the conversation. If you are new to the series, then I do encourage you to take a look at the back catalogue. I've got some conversations with some of the brightest and best in Berlin Tech. And if you want to stay up to date with future episodes, then please do hit that subscribe button and that follow button. It really helps me try and gain some traction with this series. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. And until next time, goodbye.